So, welcome to our book club discussion on Elon Musk, right?
Exactly.
So, I'm Paula Williams.
And I'm John Williams.
And we are ABCI, and ABCI's mission is
to help all you folks out there in the aviation world sell more products and services.
Absolutely. So, to do that, one of the things that we do each month is we cover a book, usually a bestseller of some sort in sales, marketing, business, or a similar topic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this one is Elon Musk by Ashlee Vance.
Above the microphone.
Above the microphone. This is Elon Musk by Ashlee Vance, which actually was better than I was expecting.
Yeah. Only because his life was a little interesting in the way he approached some things.
I think better than I was expecting because I'm not a real fan of biographies. I would much rather read how-to books or fiction books or anything, but biographies. But the last 2 months we've read biographies. We read Richard Branson and now Elon Musk, and of the people in the aviation industry or close to the aviation industry, I think those are two of the most interesting people, right?
Yeah.
Love them or hate them.
Well, I was going to say he's into space more than aviation, but still.
That's true. I know he's followed by a lot of people in the aviation industry because of the connection with space and also with the connection with the electric batteries. So there are some connections there, and that was one of the reasons that we put it on the list, and I'm not sure why everyone voted for it, but a lot of people did, so there you are. All right, so first impressions, what did you think?
Well, I just found it interesting to know that he came from basically nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And when he got here, threw everything into the pie and built something out of nothing.
Right, and that's not what you think of the Silicon Valley millionaires and the dot-com billionaires. You don't think about the fact that, 10 years before, or 5 years before even, he was homeless in Canada.
Right.
Just came here with a plane ticket and not much else, and looked for distant relatives that could put him up on their sofa while he tried to figure out how to get to Silicon Valley and find somebody to work for, and sleeping on beanbags and God knows what all,
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty classic rags to riches story, which is kind of cool.
Yes.
He's not a rich kid. This is not a...
Yeah, his dad didn't give him $1 million to go figure things out.
Exactly. Right, and he didn't go to all the best schools like Bill Gates. He didn't, have the advantage. He didn't grow up in the valley like Steve Jobs. And he's actually from South Africa. His family had roots in America and Canada, but definitely not from around these parts, right?
Nope.
Okay. So I pulled out a few things that I thought were really interesting about the book, just a few key points. One of them was focus, and the reason I thought this was really interesting is because a lot of us have kids like this, that will get so involved in what they're doing that they literally do not hear you. And he had his hearing checked like a bunch of different times because he said, I didn't hear you when his mom was calling, when his friends were talking to him, whatever. They thought there was something wrong with him because he was so involved in a book or so involved in his own thoughts or a daydream or something he was working on in his head that he literally would shut everything else out. And this made school a little difficult for him and making friends a little difficult for him. And, there were a bunch of stories in the book about how the family would go shopping or whatever and stuff. They'd be looking for Elon, when they're trying to get ready to go home. And he's nowhere to be found. They finally found him on the floor of a bookstore or a library or something with a book in hand, and he's not done yet. So he's not ready to go yet. But a lot of us were like that as kids, or a lot of us had kids that were like that. Mm-hmm. And, so I guess that's a good sign rather than a bad sign. You do want to check their hearing once a year, but probably not more than that, right?
Yeah, well, I got into amateur radio like that.
They did?
Yeah, when I was 12. Got into flying like that when I was 14.
Mm-hmm. And he'd be up all night, reading books under the covers, and you were up all night playing with your amateur radio. And I think a lot of kids get so involved in things, and we tend to discourage that, but I think you really want to find something that absorbs their attention like that, whether it's video games, Dungeons and Dragons, books. For Musk, it was all three of those things. You know, he'd have weeks-long Dungeons and Dragons parties. I remember my brother doing that, thinking these guys are insane. But
my son did that for 2 or 3 years ongoing.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So they wouldn't sleep, they wouldn't eat, they wouldn't...
Oh, yeah. Well, we made them come home. But they had a place to go, and they'd leave the game set up and go back just as soon as they got their homework done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember my brother, sometimes during summer vacation or whatever, everybody would take 2 weeks off of work or whatever, be in somebody's basement, and they would sleep there, they would eat there.
Well, we were in center of Ohio, and there was a place not far from the house where somebody converted an empty office
Mm-hmm.
for playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
And they charged the kids like $1 a day or $1 something.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you think your kids' brains are being rotted by those games or by reading or whatever, reading comic books, reading anything, I guess that's a reassuring story in Elon Musk that he seemed to come out okay after all that, right? Okay. So, and he will tell you, he actually reads several books a month, several books a week sometimes, depending on what he's working on and how much he's traveling. That's really when he does the most of it. And he reads anything he can get his hands on, encyclopedias, whatever. He's bored and there's a piece of reading material, he gets into it. So that's a wonderful thing.
Well, in my side business of helping people with business, I've got a client and I've been reading several books, trying to catch up on stuff in his business so I can be
Conversant?
more conversant, yes.
Yeah, cool. And they complain that people have such a short attention span these days. I think this is one way to improve it, is if you can read one book a month, and this is part of the reason I'm so nuts about the book club and everything, is because you have to be able to focus on your business rather than in your business. And if you are too busy doing tasks all the time to step back and think about it and, read a biography and think, from someone else's point of view, what would Elon Musk do with my business? It's so neat to be able to put your business in the perspective of a book and think about it from a different perspective, because you get so involved in it that you don't back up and think very often. And so you need to take the time and the energy and everything else to read, to get some input from outside your business, and then to focus on your business.
And as your business grows, you need to be the visionary.
Exactly.
So you need to be thinking and reading and thinking. Exactly.
Right. We just recently hired an assistant so that I can spend more time thinking and less time doing. And, right now it seems like that's going the other way because it takes some time for people to get up to speed. But, and that's just the natural cycle of things. But that's the intention, is really to spend more time thinking and less time doing. And that's what improves the business. So focus, that's thing number 1 that I learned out of this book. Thing number 2, hairballs. Most high achievers have trouble working with others, and self-taught computer programmers tend to program in what they call hairballs, which are things that get the job done, but they don't necessarily work very well with other pieces of code as part of a larger program.
As a matter of fact, I had to fire a guy because of that.
Because he was making hairballs.
Well, he'd been hired to do something, and the project manager at the time was just didn't understand what he was doing, didn't understand the entire concept of the project, and I was asked to go in and fix it. And so I went in and I observed for a week, and I realized this guy was doing exactly that. I told him, don't do that. And I said, because if you do it, I'm going to have to fire you. Well, you and this project will fail if you do. I said, no, Whitey.
No, we won't.
No, because I don't allow my projects to depend on a single person.
Right.
And I fired him, and within a week we had things running smoothly, and we almost made it on time and on budget, but it was a lot better than it would have been.
Yeah. So, if you're familiar with computer coding or anything like that, basically it's about documenting and making your code clear enough that other people can actually use it. And if you don't document your code, and if you tried to make it obscure, and I don't think he was trying to make it obscure. In fact, from the discussion in the book, it sounds like he just didn't know any better. He went into programming from the perspective of let's just make this work, not let's help other people use this as part of a larger thing. So the code that Musk wrote for the first project that they did, which was a company called Zip2, which was kind of a internet directory kind of a project, it was really, really hard for other people to use his code because it was so hairball-y. And, he would come in at night and rewrite pieces of their code because he didn't like the way it worked, and nobody would be able to understand what he did, and just make things even more tangled. And they ended up having a lot of literally knock-down, drag-out fights over the code that he was writing and the code that other people were writing, and, people who disagree about how it should be done. So learning to work well with others is really, really hard for high-performance individuals, right?
True.
In fact, I know we've used this example before, but your master's program was a tribe of high-performance individuals that was not a tribe at all to begin with.
Well, it was interesting. The first day they walk you in a class, the prof gets up behind the podium and looks around, he says, there are 4 corners in a room, and the podium, you have 5 minutes to make 5 teams.
Mm-hmm. Everybody go.
And we did. Well, the team I ended up on was a bunch of the type A personalities. Mm-hmm. We grew up having to depend upon ourselves because every time you depend on somebody else, you end up doing the work anyway, and it wasn't as good as if you just did it.
Mm-hmm. So you were a bunch of high-performance hairball creators.
Yeah, but we hired a consultant to come in and straighten us out, and then we ended up being the highest performing team in that class. Right.
You learn to be interdependent rather than independent.
Yep. In fact, we actually took a final as a team verbally, and the prof, he gave us the choice, and he actually interviewed each one of us separately to make sure we knew the risks.
Mm-hmm.
But when we finished, we got the highest grade he'd ever given a class.
Wow.
So we did good.
Yep, you did. And you got to the point where you could trust each other and depend on each other.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, this was one of the things that was really, and what I love about these kinds of books, once I finally get into them, are that these are relatable people. He's not a larger-than-life kind of person. He's somebody, Elon Musk, is somebody that has struggles with certain things that I have struggles with, like not making hairballs, making things easy for my assistant. That's something that I struggle with, is, making sure that everything that I do is clear and documentable and repeatable and all of those things. And, he had to work on putting together groups of people and then trusting them enough to not come back in the middle of the night and rewrite their code because he's worried that it's not going to work, which drives people crazy, especially high-performance people, right?
Yep.
So, becoming interdependent is a lot harder, I think, for those of us who dreaded those group projects at school.
Oh, yeah.
Right, okay. Next one is risk. I like his quote, there's a tremendous bias against taking risks. Everyone is trying to optimize their ass covering. I think this is so indicative of the aviation industry right now.
It's true all throughout American corporations. Right.
And on his last earnings call, he said, if you're into day trading, sell my stock. If you're not in it for the long haul, if you don't have a high enough risk tolerance, then get out of my face because I don't want to have anything to do with you. And that has never been said before in the history of stock earnings meetings that I know of, right? I think that was actually really fantastic because what that's done, the culture of those quarterly earnings reports and things like that, has really made business so short-sighted and so risk-averse that we're not doing the kinds of things that we did 100 years ago, making the railroads and the...
50 years ago.
Exactly. There are so few companies that are willing to take risks. And in the aviation industry, it's almost worse because we're so highly regulated and everybody has those quarterly earnings reports that they have to file and everything else. Some of the smaller industries or smaller businesses have more risk tolerance, which is why we love working with the ones that are not necessarily public companies and not necessarily in that category and have to please a room full of people every quarter, right?
Yep.
Right. Because there's a lot of long-term decisions and a lot of things that need to happen that are going to look bad in the short term. Are you willing to do that, right?
He obviously is.
He obviously is, exactly. And it's really refreshing to see. Okay, so that's risk. Do you have anything to add to
No,
that?
That's a great quote.
Yeah. Big ideas. He didn't mention it, but I really like the book, David Schwartz's The Magic of Thinking Big. What is really neat about Musk, I think, is that he had the same ideas when he was a little kid that he carried all the way through to now, and he's still working on the same big idea. He got a big idea when he was a little kid, and that was, I'm going to save the planet, and we're going to save it also by taking some of the stress off it and going somewhere else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the quote is, I think it would be cool to be born on Earth and die on Mars. Hopefully not on impact. So some other things that were really interesting is that he was an environmentalist when he was growing up in South Africa, when that was not cool.
Mm-hmm.
South Africa was an extractive economy. Everybody there was miners and into industries that were not big on the environment. He didn't care that it was not cool. He was a book reader, he was a nerd, he was a geek. When it was not cool, he didn't care that it was not cool because he had a big idea, you know? He stuck to his guns and he polished some of his people skills. You know, he quit making hairballs, but he didn't change the big idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of his businesses, and a lot of the people that we work with, a lot of the folks in our insider circle have big ideas, and they have more than one company, a lot of them. But those companies have a common thread, and that's the only way that they stay sane, right?
Yeah.
So in Musk's case, he's got 3 companies, Tesla, SolarCity, and SpaceX. All of them have the same big idea, and that is about saving the Earth and saving humanity from environmental crises. And that's what he's here to do, and by gosh, he's going to do it, right?
It is.
Katie barred the door. You know, he's done more than anybody I know for any of those things. In fact, we've got solar panels on our house and have a position order on batteries, and they're a little slow to deliver in this market, but we're big fans of a lot of his technology. You know how John feels about the Tesla car if you listen to some of the podcasts, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay, so key takeaways: focus, hairballs, risk, big ideas, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you just came in now, you need to go
Listen
back
to the rest of
and
this.
review the previous couple of slides so you understand.
Right. Does that make any sense? Anyway, so yeah, this one was Elon Musk by Ashlee Vance, which is really great because Ashlee Vance did not start out as a fan of Elon Musk and ended up being, I think, kind of a fanboy. What do you think?
Probably.
But that's kind of a thick book, and our book club is kind of complaining that it's summer and we don't want to work this hard. So the next book is this big. This is Growth Hacker Marketing, and it is about a quarter the size, so you'll get through this pretty quickly, and I know it's summer, so you've got a lot of other things to do. This is a nice, easy, tuck in your carry-on kind of a book, right?
This one is.
Yeah, much easier than the big, thick books we've been reading lately. For Marketing by Ryan Holiday, he also wrote Trust Me, I'm Lying, which is also a very popular marketing book.
Mm-hmm.
So enjoy that, and we'll talk to you next month. If you have an interest in joining our book club, you can find it on our website or go to the Let's Talk button in the lower left-hand corner, and let's talk about what you're doing in your business, and you'd be a good fit for our book club and our other Insider Circle services, and we'll go from there.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day.
See you next time.